I was standing in the kitchen that morning, pouring a cup of lukewarm coffee, when the dull ache in my lower back reminded me just how far along I was. 34 weeks, give or take. The August heat in Austin pressed against the windows, the air thick enough to taste. But the heaviness in my chest had nothing to do with the weather. Ethan was supposed to be at work. He'd kissed me on the forehead before leaving, his hand lingering just long enough on my shoulder for me to feel that old comfort. But lately, even that had felt rehearsed. I was halfway through sipping when my phone lit up. A text from our joint bank. Large withdrawal, $500. Hayes Car Rentals. My first thought was that Ethan had rented a car for a surprise. Maybe something for the baby. Maybe a weekend getaway before everything changed. I wanted so badly to believe that, but my gut clenched. Connor Hayes. My husband's friend from the gym. I'd met him once. Too many smiles. Too much eye contact. The kind of man who makes you instinctively step back. I opened the banking app, my fingers trembling. That was when I saw it. Not just one, but dozens of small charges I hadn't noticed before. Hotel rooms, dinners, even lingerie boutiques, all dating back months, all with patterns that matched the days Ethan had been working late. I don't remember deciding to call him. My thumb just pressed his contact, and suddenly I was listening to his voicemail. His voice, calm and casual, telling me to leave a message. I hung up without a word. That was when the baby kicked, hard, almost violently, as if she could feel my heart pounding against her tiny world. I pressed my palm to my belly, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. I've got you." But the truth was, I didn't even know if I had myself anymore. Keep watching. It only gets deeper. Back when Ethan and I met, I never could have imagined this. I was 22, fresh out of nursing school, still carrying that restless energy of someone who thinks life will give you exactly what you put in. He was charming without trying, all sandy hair and easy laughter. We met at a barbecue hosted by a mutual friend. He offered me the last burger, even though he'd been saving it for himself, and somehow that tiny gesture became the foundation of a 7-year love story. We married 2 years later, in a small ceremony under an oak tree just outside the city. No fancy venue, no designer dress, just us, a few friends, and the kind of joy you can't stage for photographs. We talked about kids from the beginning, but we both wanted to wait until we were ready. Ready turned into years of saving, buying a modest house, and building what I thought was a steady, unshakable marriage. Then last winter, we decided it was time. The positive pregnancy test came on a chilly January morning, and Ethan had lifted me off my feet, spinning me around the kitchen like we were in some cheesy romantic comedy. He'd started calling me Mama in this warm, teasing way, and I'd started to believe all those sacrifices had been worth it. But somewhere around the second trimester, little cracks began to show. He'd stay out later. He'd turn his phone over when it buzzed. When I asked, he'd say I was hormonal, that I was overthinking things. And maybe I was. I wanted so badly to be wrong. The first real sign came in June. He forgot to pick me up from my prenatal checkup, claiming he'd been caught up at work. I sat in that waiting room for an hour, my hands resting on my belly, trying not to cry, as I watched couples leave together, arms linked, faces lit with excitement. Now, staring at the bank records in our dim kitchen, I knew those weren't harmless mistakes. They were choices, deliberate, cruel choices. I felt the baby move again, softer this time, and it pulled me back from the edge of collapsing. This wasn't just about me anymore. If Ethan was willing to betray me now, in these weeks when I was most vulnerable, what kind of father would he be? My hands shook as I grabbed my keys. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew I couldn't sit in that house waiting for him to come home and lie to my face. My first stop would be my sister's place. She lived 20 minutes away, and she'd always said her door was open. I just prayed she'd still mean it when I showed up unannounced, belly first, heart in pieces. The drive to my sister's apartment felt longer than it should have. Austin traffic was its usual mess, and every red light seemed to trap me in my own thoughts. I kept replaying the numbers in my head. $500 here, $200 there, wondering how many of those charges had been swiped away from the life we were supposed to be building together. When I finally pulled into her complex, the sun was dipping low, bleeding orange over the rooftops. I'd barely stepped out of the car when the front door swung open, and there she was, Laura, barefoot, hair pulled back, her face already creased with worry. "Rachel, what's wrong? Are you... Oh my God, are you in labor?" "No," I said quickly, shaking my head. "Not yet. I need to talk." She stepped aside, holding the door wide. Inside, her place smelled faintly of vanilla candles and something cooking on the stove. I lowered myself onto her couch, feeling the cushions sink under the weight of both me and the baby. "Ethan?" she guessed, sitting across from me. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and slid it across the coffee table. She leaned forward, scanning the transactions, and I watched her expression shift from confusion to anger. "Connor Hayes," she said, her voice low but sharp. "Rachel, is that?" "Yes," I cut in. "It's him. It's been him for months, apparently. Hotels, dinners, God knows what else. All while I've been home, pregnant, thinking he was working late." Laura leaned back, exhaling hard. I always thought there was something off about that guy. Ethan defended him too much. Like, almost protective. Her words felt like tiny pins under my skin. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand why no one had told me sooner. But I also knew I wouldn't have listened. I'd been too busy holding on to the version of Ethan I thought I knew. "So what now?" she asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted. "I just couldn't stay there tonight. I can't even look at him without thinking about... them." My voice cracked on the last word, and Laura reached over, placing her hand over mine. "You're not alone, Rach. You and the baby. You're safe here. Whatever you decide, we'll figure it out." The baby shifted again, almost as if she could feel the tension in the room. I rested my other hand on my belly, drawing slow, steady breaths. Later that night, I lay awake in Laura's guest room, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily overhead. Every creak in the apartment made me think it was Ethan, somehow here, ready to apologize, or worse, ready to deny everything. My phone sat silent on the nightstand, though I'd seen the missed calls earlier. Around midnight, I gave in and unlocked it. There were 6 voicemails from him. The first few were the usual. "Hey, call me back." But by the last one, his voice had shifted. "Rachel, I don't know where you are, but this isn't what you think. Please, please, just come home so we can talk." Not what I think. The bank statements were sitting in my purse. The dates, the amounts, the names. They didn't lie. And deep down, I knew Ethan didn't call because he was worried about me. He called because he was worried about himself. I turned the phone face down and closed my eyes, willing myself to sleep. But even in the dark, the image of him with Connor kept flashing in my mind. The way they'd probably laughed at me, at my swollen feet and tired face, while they spent our money on champagne and hotel sheets. The next morning, Laura made pancakes, claiming I needed something warm and sweet before facing whatever came next. I forced down a few bites, even though my stomach felt like it was lined with stone. "I think you should talk to a lawyer," she said over coffee. "Just find out what your options are. For you, for the baby. If he's been draining your accounts, you need to protect yourself." The word lawyer made my skin prickle. I'd never imagined needing one for my marriage, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was right. Ethan had already crossed lines I couldn't uncross. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. A text from Ethan. "I'm coming over to Laura's. We need to talk." My heart lurched. He knew where I was. Laura glanced at me, her jaw tightening. "Do you want me to tell him to leave?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hear what he'd say, to see if there was any shred of the man I married still in there. Another part of me wanted to lock the door and never face him again. But the decision was made for me when a sharp knock echoed from the front door. Laura reached the door before I could stand. She kept the chain on, cracked it 2 inches, and said through the gap, "Now is not a good time, Ethan." He didn't try to look past her at first. "I just need 5 minutes," he said, voice too calm. "Rachel, please." I pushed myself up and stepped into view. The baby pressed high under my ribs, making it hard to breathe. 5 minutes, I said, "in the living room. Then you leave." Laura unhooked the chain only after he nodded. She stayed by the doorway, arms folded, a silent witness. Ethan walked in with his hands raised like a man showing he wasn't a threat. He looked tired, unshaven, eyes flicking to my stomach and then away. "I was worried," he began. "You didn't come home. You didn't answer." "I saw the bank statements," I cut in. "Hayes car rentals. Dozens of little things. Hotels, restaurants. Months of it, Ethan." His jaw tightened. "Connor lent me his corporate account a few times. It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Laura asked, crisp. "Because it looks exactly like what she thinks." "It was client stuff," he said. "Networking. I know I should have told you, but you've been stressed and—" "Don't," I said, sharper than I meant. "Don't suggest my pregnancy made me imagine receipts." His phone buzzed on cue. He flinched, face pinched, and flipped its screen down. Laura's eyebrows rose. I held out my hand, put it on the table, face up. He hesitated, then complied. Another buzz. A preview flashed. Connor H. Same room as last time. Key at front desk. None of us moved. Laura's breath hissed through her teeth. Ethan's mouth opened and shut. I sat slowly, because if I fell, I wasn't sure I'd get up. "How long?" He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "It's not... We didn't..." It got complicated. "How? Long?" He stared at the wall over my shoulder. "Since spring." "The 2nd trimester," I murmured. "When you started working late." "It wasn't planned," he said, voice small. "Connor and I, we were just lifting after work and talking, and I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." "You chose to hurt me," I said, repeatedly. He swallowed. "I still love you, Rachel." Laura laughed once, humorless. "You love her so much you spent joint money on hotel sheets." Ethan turned toward me again, eyes glassy. I panicked. The baby, the house, the pressure. Connor listened. That's all it was at first. I never meant. Stop explaining your betrayal like it's a weather event, I said. You made appointments, reservations, withdrawals. Those are choices. We sat in the echo of that word. Choices. He shifted tactics. Look, we can fix this. Come home. We'll get counseling. I've already moved some money to cover the mortgage. You don't have to worry about that. Something cold slid down my spine. Moved what money? He blinked. From the savings. Only for a bit. I'll put it back. Which account? Laura asked. Our emergency fund, he said, and the vacation savings. Just to float things for a couple weeks. Connor said, Laura repeated, disgusted. I pressed a hand to my belly. The baby rolled under my palm like a wave. You siphoned our savings while I was scheduling prenatal screenings. It's still ours, he said quickly. I didn't burn it. I'm taking care of you. No, I said, steady now. You're managing me. He lifted his hands again. Rachel, please. Think about the baby. Insurance. The delivery. You need me. I need stability, I said. I need honesty. I need our money not disappearing into hotel rooms and rental cars. The phone buzzed again. Connor H. I'm here if you need me. Don't let her spin this. Laura's mouth fell open. She picked up the phone with 2 fingers like it was dirty and slid it farther from him. Ethan reached for a tone I'd never heard. Firm. Almost coaxing. Let's be rational. If you stay at Laura's, you're making this bigger than it needs to be. Come home. We'll reset. I'll handle the bills. You focus on the baby. There it was. The pattern laid bare. Keep me soft. Keep me grateful. Keep me dependent. I pulled a folded paper from my purse and put it on the table. That's the list of charges I printed. I already called the bank to freeze the joint credit card. Tomorrow I'm opening a separate account in my name. His face darkened. You can't just... I can, I said, calm as a nurse in an emergency. And I will. I'll also be contacting an attorney about temporary support and exclusive use of the house until delivery. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I didn't either. Laura stepped forward. You're done here, Ethan. She's asked you to leave. He pivoted, trying one last door. Rachel, think about our daughter. Do you want her born into a broken home? I stood, every joint protesting, every muscle aligning. I want her born into a home that tells the truth. For a second I thought he might rage, or cry, or kneel. He did none of those. He pocketed the paper without looking at it, took his phone, and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. Counseling, he said, not turning. I'll set it up. Don't bother, I said. My counselor will be a lawyer. He left. Laura locked the door and leaned her forehead against it. The apartment exhaled with him gone. I sank back onto the couch and let my hands fall into my lap. The quiet felt enormous. Then, like the smallest lighthouse in a storm, the baby nudged. Gentle. Certain. I followed her rhythm and breathed. We call a lawyer today, Laura said softly. We get your own account, your own card. We talk to your OB about stress and delivery plans, and we list out everything you need from the house. I nodded, and I want his keys back. We'll get them. I took out my phone and started a new note titled For the Lawyer. Timeline, charges, screenshots, missed pickups, the night he forgot my appointment, the messages from Connor. I wrote until the ache in my back settled into something almost manageable. When I finally set the phone down, Laura handed me a glass of water. You were incredible, she said. I didn't feel incredible. I felt hollowed out, and somehow steadier. "This isn't the life I planned," I whispered. "No," she said. "It might be the life you build." The baby turned again, a slow roll that felt like agreement. I rested both hands over her and whispered, not for Ethan or Connor or even Laura, but for the small person listening from the inside. "We're going to be okay." By the next morning, I was running on less than 4 hours of sleep. The baby's kicks had been steady through the night, almost like she was keeping time with my restless thoughts. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face when I told him I was freezing the joint account. That flash of disbelief, almost insult. Laura drove me downtown to meet with a family law attorney. The office was in a converted house, warm wood floors, and the faint smell of lemon polish. My hands trembled as I filled out the intake form, checking boxes that made the situation feel painfully official. Infidelity, misuse of marital funds, emotional distress during pregnancy. When the attorney, a calm woman named Denise Foster, came in, she didn't waste time. "You're 34 weeks? Then we move quickly. Our priorities are immediate financial protection, securing the home, and outlining custody arrangements for after the birth." The word custody made my stomach twist. "I don't want to keep him from her," I said. "You want her safe," Denise finished for me, "and you want stability." Laura sat beside me, arms crossed but eyes soft. "Ethan's been draining savings for months. There's a pattern, and there's a third party involved." Denise nodded. "We'll document everything. Do you have screenshots?" I slid my phone across the desk. Denise scrolled through the messages from Connor, her expression unreadable. "This helps," she said finally. "It's not just infidelity. It's misuse of funds. And it's happening during a vulnerable time for you." We spent the next hour mapping out a plan. Temporary exclusive use of the house. A separate account in my name. Immediate notification to freeze any remaining joint lines of credit. Denise assured me the court would take my pregnancy into account when setting temporary orders. When we left, I felt both heavier and lighter, like the first step had been taken. But the road ahead was lined with storm clouds. That afternoon, Laura drove me back to the apartment. I'd barely set my bag down when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Ethan. It was Connor. "We should talk before this gets worse." My throat tightened. I showed Laura. She frowned. "Block him." But something inside me, maybe curiosity, maybe self-preservation, made me hesitate. If he's willing to talk, maybe I can get him to admit what's been going on. In writing, Laura didn't like it, but she didn't stop me. I typed back, "Talk about what?" The reply came fast. "Ethan's a mess. He thinks you're trying to ruin him. I didn't mean for this to blow up like it did." My hands shook as I typed. "Then tell me what exactly this is." There was a pause. Then we started hanging out after the gym. Drinks turned into more. "He told me you two were basically done." I didn't think. I took a screenshot, heart pounding. Proof. Real, undeniable proof. Before I could reply, Laura's phone rang. "Ethan." She silenced it, jaw tight. "He's going to start circling Rach. He's losing control." That evening, I sat on the couch with a notepad, writing down every incident I could remember. The missed appointments. The strange charges. The nights he came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. Laura made tea and set it beside me, her quiet presence a shield. When the knock came, it wasn't loud, but it froze both of us. Laura peered through the peephole, then looked back at me. "It's him." I don't want to see him, I said. She opened the door just enough to speak. She's not taking visitors. Ethan's voice filtered through. I just want to drop off some things for the baby. I hesitated, then nodded. Let him leave them at the door. Laura passed along the message. A moment later, a small bag sat in the hallway. Laura brought it inside and set it on the coffee table. Inside were baby clothes, onesies, tiny socks, a soft pink blanket. A folded note rested on top. Rach, I'm trying. I want to be there when she's born. Please don't shut me out. E. The baby kicked just then, sharp and sudden. I folded the note and set it aside without reading it again. That night, I lay in bed, one hand on my belly. We're going to have a safe place for you, I whispered. No lies. No walking on eggshells. My phone buzzed. Another message from Connor. If you go through with the lawyer, it's going to get ugly. For everyone. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I took another screenshot and sent it to Denise with a single line, adding this to the file. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was no longer reacting. I was building my case. 2 days later, the August heat broke with a sudden slate-gray storm that rattled the windows of Laura's apartment. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, hands cradling the roundness of my belly, and timed the pressure waves that had started at dawn. Not contractions. Not exactly. More like the air before thunder, a tightening that warned the sky would split. 35 weeks. Too early to panic, late enough to prepare. Denise's office had moved fast. By noon, a courier had delivered a stack of papers for temporary orders, exclusive use of the house pending delivery, a freeze on joint credit lines, and an instruction that all non-essential withdrawals stop immediately. I signed where the tabs told me to. Blue here, yellow there, feeling like each signature stitched a small seam back into the fabric of my life. Laura drove us by the house to pick up essentials. I stood in the doorway of the nursery, breathing in the faint scent of new paint and dryer sheets. The crib Ethan and I had assembled stood against the far wall, its pale wood gleaming under the soft lamplight. Tiny washed clothes hung over the back of the rocking chair, the ones with the little cloud buttons Ethan had said looked whimsically expensive. I tucked the baby blanket I'd crocheted into a tote and paused, palm against my ribs as the baby shifted. Laura's voice floated from the hallway. "Just the hospital bag and the file?" she called. "And the car seat," I answered. "Denise said we shouldn't be scrambling when it's time." We were loading the last bag when Ethan's truck pulled into the driveway, wipers clacking across the windshield. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the shape of him stepping out into the drizzle. His hair was damp, his shirt rumpled. He looked softer than the man who'd stood in Laura's doorway, worn, almost boyish, and I hated that a part of me still recognized the slope of his shoulders as home. "Rach," he said, palms out. "You're here. Good. We should talk without Connor," I said. The words came out smooth, steady. "Great idea. You can start by explaining these." I lifted my phone, the screen bright with the screenshots I'd sent Denise. His messages, Connor's confirmations, the timeline that undercut all the half-truths. He glanced down, jaw tightening. "I'm not doing this in the rain." Laura locked the trunk with a click. "You're not doing this at all. She has counsel. You should call yours." Ethan's eyes flicked to the nursery window, to the soft lamplight, to the crib. "I put that together," he said, as if staking a claim. "I paid for half this house." "And you drained the savings we built to live in it," I said. A pressure wave rose and fell, low, dull, like a warning bell, and I breathed through it. Temporary orders were filed. You've been served. He blinked, as if I'd spoken a language he couldn't parse. You're really doing this? Not a question. I am. Another breath. Because I have to. Rain thickened, turning the driveway into a river of silver. Laura touched my elbow. We should go. Ethan stepped forward, desperation leaking into his voice. Just, please, let me be there when she's born. I'll stay in the waiting room. I'll do whatever you say. But don't shut me out. I searched his face for the man who'd spun me in the kitchen on the morning of the positive test. The man who'd whispered "Mama" against my neck like a secret. He was there in traces, the way old ink remains on a page even after it's been erased. Then my phone buzzed. A preview slid across the top. Connor H. He's spiraling. Don't let her take everything. The spell broke. You're communicating strategy with your affair partner about our child's birth, I said quietly. Read that sentence back, Ethan. Hear how it sounds. He didn't answer. The rain answered for him, hissing in the oak leaves. I turned toward the car and felt it, that sudden, unmistakable band of pressure low in my back, wrapping forward until I had to brace a hand against the trunk. Laura's keys froze halfway to the door. Rach? I waited, counted, breathed. It ebbed. Not yet, I said, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. Ethan's face creased. Let me drive you. No, Laura said. We've got it. He swallowed, nodded once, and stepped back. For all the words we'd thrown like stones, it was the quietness of that step that cut me. The knowledge that even now, he could obey a boundary. If only he had before. We left him in the driveway and drove through a city rinsed clean. At Laura's, she timed the tightening with a kitchen timer, while I perched on the yoga ball and pretended calm. The surges came every 20 minutes, then drifted to 30, then slipped away, like a tide. False labor, the doctor said later over speakerphone. Rest. Hydrate. Come in if your water breaks. That night, exhaustion finally claimed me. I dreamed of oceans and wooden cradles, of hands lifting me from a dark shore. When I woke, dawn was a soft line at the curtains, and a text from Denise blinked on my screen. Orders granted. Sheriff will serve today. You have exclusive use pending delivery, and 2 weeks postpartum. Deposit arrived. Your separate account is funded. I exhaled, a sound like an earthquake settling. Thank you, I typed, thumbs clumsy with relief. Laura celebrated by making French toast we didn't really eat. We installed the car seat base in her sedan. Clicks and tugs, and the satisfaction of a belt that didn't budge. After, I sat on the couch with the hospital folder in my lap and read each page again, the way a pilot reads a checklist on final approach. Birth plan, pediatrician's contact, insurance cards, power of attorney if I needed Laura to sign in my stead. Everything labeled, everything in its sleeve. My phone buzzed once, then again. Ethan, I was served. I'll respect the house order. A minute later. I'll transfer back what I can today. Then, after a long gap, I want to do right by you and her, even if I don't know how to be the man you deserved. I stared at that last line until the letters meant nothing. Maybe contrition, maybe performance, maybe both. I didn't answer. I forwarded the thread to Denise and put the phone on Do Not Disturb. Outside, the storm had moved east. The sky over Austin cleared to a blue so bright it felt like new glass. I lay back, one hand on the small, shifting hill of my belly, and spoke softly to the person I hadn't met, but already knew. We have a roof. We have a plan. We have people who show up when they say they will." She turned, a slow hello against my palm. I closed my eyes and pictured walking into the hospital, not as a woman unraveling, but as a mother arriving. Not alone, never alone. Car seat ready, bag by the door, a name on my tongue that no one else got to claim. When sleep took me again, it was gentle. The day my daughter decided to arrive started quietly, was almost deceptively so. It was early September, the air finally cooler, a soft breeze slipping through Laura's kitchen window. I was making tea when I felt it. A sudden warmth, a gush that left no doubt. "My water just broke," I said. My voice was calm, but my hands trembled. Laura didn't hesitate. "Hospital bag. Now." The ride was a blur of traffic lights and checklists. We reached the maternity wing, where the nurses whisked me into a room painted in soft blues. Machines beeped steadily as they wrapped a monitor around my belly. The steady thump of my baby's heartbeat filled the air, strong, certain. Labor came in waves, each one a wall I had to climb and descend before the next. Laura stayed by my side, wiping my forehead, holding my hand through the worst of it. Somewhere between contractions, I noticed my phone on the tray table. It buzzed once, Ethan's name on the screen. I let it go unanswered. Hours passed. The pain sharpened, then blurred, then sharpened again. And then, suddenly, there she was. Tiny, warm, and wailing. Her fists clenched like she'd been born ready to fight for her place in the world. They laid her on my chest, and the rest of the room dissolved. She had a head full of soft dark hair, a wrinkled little brow, and the smallest sigh I'd ever heard once the crying stopped. "Hi," I whispered. "It's me. I'm your mom." Laura was crying quietly in the corner. I was too, but my tears felt different, less like grief, more like release. 2 days later, we were home at Laura's. The exclusive use order meant the house was mine, but I wasn't ready to go back yet. That place held too many echoes. For now, safety was more important than space. Ethan sent a bouquet of lilies with a card. "Congratulations. I'd like to meet her when you're ready." I placed the flowers in water, set the card aside, and didn't respond. Denise had been clear. Any contact about visitation would go through her. Nights were a mix of feedings, soft lullabies, and exhaustion that sank into my bones. But in between, there were moments. Her tiny hand curling around my finger, the way her eyes seemed to search my face as if she already knew it by heart, that made every breath feel new. One morning, a week after we came home, I sat in the rocking chair with her pressed against my chest. The light spilled through the blinds in long, golden lines. I realized I was humming without even knowing it. Not a song I'd learned, but something that felt ancient, passed down from somewhere deep. Laura came in, coffee in hand. "You look different," she said softly. "I feel different," I replied. "I thought this would break me. But she's the beginning." Later that month, I met with Denise again to sign final paperwork for the temporary orders. She smiled as she slid the file into her drawer. "You've done more than most do in twice the time," she said. "You've built a foundation. Now you can decide what the future looks like, on your terms." Driving back, I realized she was right. I'd walked into her office terrified, and I was leaving with something I hadn't felt in months: ownership of my own life. That night, I stood by the window, holding my daughter as the city lights blinked in the distance. "We're going to be okay," I whispered again. But this time, it wasn't a promise I hoped I could keep. It was a truth I knew. I don't know exactly what my life will look like a year from now. I know there will be challenges. I know Ethan will always be part of my daughter's life in some way. But I also know this. She will grow up in a home where love isn't conditional, where trust isn't bartered, where the people in her world show up when they say they will, and that's worth everything. Friends, if this story touched your heart, if you understand how important it is to have honest, reliable people by your side, please support the channel. Like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your words and attention help us create more stories that give hope and strength to those going through difficult times. Because inside each of us lives a strength we only discover when we think everything is lost.